Welcome. I'm an ambassador Girl Scout. Today I'm talking to Dr. Seaman. Let's get started on left. Dr. Seaman, would you like to add anything?
Would you like me to introduce myself?
Yeah, you can introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Carolyn Seaman. I am a professor at UMBC in the Department of Information Systems. I'm a computer scientist, and I'm also director of the Center for Women in Technology at UMBC.
Okay, so how did you become interested in computer science?
So I'm old. So I went through high school and college quite a long time ago. When I was in high school, there weren't many computers around. We had one computer, and I was in the Gifted and Talented program, the GT program, which I think something like that still exists in most schools. And we had a room that we could hang out in during study hall, and they had one computer there. It was very, I mean, it wasn't old at the time, but it was ancient technology now. And we could write little programs that said hello world and things like that. And it seemed to me pretty stupid that you couldn't really do anything interesting with it. So I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. And when I went to college, and I majored in math because I really liked math and I was good at math. And they were just starting a computer science program there in the college that I went to. So, and to kind of generate more interest in it, they required all the math majors to take one programming course. So I took one programming course and I loved it. I was really hooked. I love coding. To me, it's like solving puzzles. And, I still thought it was sort of a game. I didn't take it too seriously, but it made where I was going to college, they made it really easy to have a double major in math and computer science. So I decided to double major. And then after I finished my undergraduate degree, I wanted to go to grad school. But because my college had such a fledgling computer science program, I really hadn't taken that many computer science courses. I'd done well in them and I liked them, but I didn't think I was prepared for grad school in computer science. So I decided to go to grad school in math, and I studied for the GRE. So the GRE is a standardized test, kind of like the SAT, except it's for grad school. So I decided to take the math GRE test, and I studied for it because it has a reputation of being super hard. I spent months doing practice exams and practice questions and studying for it. So I showed up to take the GRE that morning, and they had run out of math GRE tests. They just didn't have any more to give me. So I couldn't take the math GRE test. And they said, well, it says here on your records that you're a double major in math and computer science, and we have plenty of computer science GRE tests. So why don't you go ahead and take that one since you already paid for it? So I said, okay, even though I hadn't prepared for it at all, but I thought, well, I'm here and I've paid for it, and I didn't want to lose the fee. So I took the computer science test, and I did really well. So I decided, well, maybe I can do grad school in computer science. So that's what I did. I ended up getting my master's and my PhD in computer science, and now I'm a computer scientist. So I've always, ever since I was exposed to it, I really liked computer science, but I didn't think I could do it. And it took, not being able to take the GRE that I wanted to kind of give me that little nudge over the edge and jump into it. So that's my story.
So if you could go back in time and give your high school self-advice, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that to take computers a little more seriously, to spend a little more time on that one little computer we had in the GT room. And I mean, nobody knew this back then. This is in the but if I could go back and say, look, computer science is going to be huge, and computers are going to rule the world, and there are going to be so many interesting and important and really fun things that you're going to be able to do with computer science and computer technology. And it's going to go to places you can't even imagine now. And if you're part of that, you have the opportunity to really change the world and to do. Hello, you still there?
Yep.
Hi, sorry, we got disconnected. Where did you lose me? What was I?
Um, uh, when we were talking about like your where would like what advice you'd give your high school self?
Okay. Yeah, so keep in mind, I graduated from high school in 1982, and nobody knew a lot about where computers were going and what computer science could do. So I guess if I were coming back from the future to talk to my high school self, I would give them a hint of where computers were going to go, and how if you're part of computing, whether it be computer science or one of the other related disciplines in computing, you have an opportunity to really shape the world and where it goes, and address really, really important problems, and really help people and help make the world a better place, if you have computing skills and if you're part of that world. So that's what I would have told myself, to take it a little more seriously, to pay more attention to that dinky little computer that we had in my high school.
What advice do you have for us as we consider our education and career goals?
So keep a very broad view of computing. So if you're in high school and you're thinking about what you might want to study in college, computer science is certainly an option, but it's not the only option. Computing is part of a lot of disciplines. So there are other disciplines that are primarily computing. So there's computer engineering, there's information systems, there's business technology. Those are different majors that we have at UMBC, and they exist at other universities too. And they're different flavors of computing. They all have to do with computers, and you have an opportunity with all of them to be part of the computing world, and to shape the future, so to speak. Um, some of them are more technical, more geared towards the innards of computers and how to get those machines to do what you want. Others are more about people and people's relationship with technology, like information systems. But the point is that well, anything you want to do, you'll be able to do better if you have some computing skills, even if that's not your um, primary area of study. Um, but the more computing skills you have, and the closer you are to the computing world, the more opportunities you'll have later to do incredibly interesting things and incredibly important things and fun things too.
Can you tell us any other jobs that may have helped you to get where you are today?
Hmm. Jobs that I had or jobs that I could have had.
I mean, jobs that you had.
Okay, so I didn't really do anything in computing until I was in college. I was I mean, the main job I had in college, which I think really helped me along the way, was I was a lab assistant, or a lab, what do they call it? A lab tutor, or there was a computer center. There was sort of, we didn't, people didn't have computers in their rooms at that time. There wasn't personal computers. Um, so there was one big lab on campus in the basement of the library where everybody had to go if they wanted to use a computer. So they had computer science majors there to kind of help people with the problems they had. So I worked in the lab as sort of the tutor, and there was a name for it, consultant maybe. But anyway, I was the person who people went to when they had problems doing what they wanted to do with the computers. And these were students from all different disciplines. They weren't just computer science students. So they were, sociology majors trying to do research or trying to write their papers and format their papers. There were psychologists working with data in spreadsheets that were having trouble with things. There were people trying to get through Computer Science 101, the first coding class, and tripping up on their coding. So it gave me a sense of the breadth of what computing can be used for, even back then. It was pretty limited back then, but even then, there were all kinds of people doing all kinds of different things and still needed to use computers. And so it gave me some flexibility. It made me understand the breadth of computing at that time. So that was the one, that was the position that really, I think, really made me understand how big this was going to be. I wasn't my first, no. After I got my master's, I worked in industry for a while. I worked at a startup for a while. And then I went overseas and I worked in the developing world as a consultant and helped teach computer literacy as well as set up some database systems, some sort of basic systems to help nonprofits in the developing world to do what they do. And that was interesting, gave me a whole other perspective on the impact of computing on people and the work they do and the kinds of things they're trying to do. And again, really understanding the importance of that relationship between people and technology and how important it is to understand that and get that right. As important as it is too to understand the innards and the inner workings of software and hardware, the people part is incredibly important. And that made me understand that.
So in college, did you have any minors?
No, I didn't. I had a double major in math and computer science because math was really my passion. That's what I started out in. I did, like most colleges. Well, I went to a liberal arts college, and so we were required to have a lot of breadth requirements, take a lot of courses in other disciplines. One of my favorite concentrations, I had to have a concentration in the arts. And so mine was in acting. And I really enjoyed it because it didn't have anything to do with math or computer science. And it was a really good outlet for me. But that was the closest thing I had to a minor.
So what challenges did you encounter in your educational path, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I mean, academically, I mean, I've always been a really good student, but there were certain courses that were really challenging for me. I remember differential equations as an undergraduate. That was a really hard course. Um, Usually in your second semester in college, if you're a computer science major, your second semester, you take sort of the second programming course, which is usually designed to be really tough and to help people really decide if this is what they want to do. And yeah, I had trouble with, I remember one of the programming assignments, I spent hours and hours long, late night hours in the computer lab trying to get it to work. So those are the academic challenges. There were some challenges, not as an undergrad, but more in graduate school. As a woman in tech, there weren't many women around, but fortunately in grad school, for both my master's and my PhD, I went to very large universities. So there were enough women around, enough other female grad students that we could kind of band together. But yeah, it wasn't so much overt sexism kind of stuff. It was more the assumption that we weren't really serious. The assumption that, well, you're girls, so yeah, it's nice that you're here. It's nice that you're learning these things, but you're not really going to do anything important. And nobody actually said that, but it was sort of the sort of treated as extra, as not part of the main student population. So there was that. A lot of, I don't know if you've heard of the imposter syndrome, but it's very common among computing students in general, but particularly women. Imposter syndrome, if you don't know, is this sort of internal feeling like you don't really belong there. You're not really smart enough. You're not really good enough. And soon other people will figure that out. And you kind of live with this constant fear that you can't really do it. And eventually the other people around you are going to figure that out and they're going to make you leave. And it's not true. It's not true, but it's very common among women and girls because that's sort of a very subtle message that we get all the time. So I struggled with imposter syndrome all the way through. The whole story about the GRE and not signing up for the computer science GRE because I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I was well prepared enough or smart enough. So I signed up for the math GRE, which was really ironic. I'm sure the math GRE would have been much, much harder. But I didn't think I could do it. And, when I didn't have a choice and I had to take it, I took it and I did really well. So that's an example of the imposter syndrome at work. So, I struggled with that all through, but overcame it because I had people around me who helped talk me through
it. So how do you use computer science in your current career?
Well, I'm a professor, so I teach it. Um, I do little bits of programming here and there. I don't very often get a chance to code, which is my first love when it comes to computing. I love coding. A couple years ago, I created a new course called Software Security, where I coded up a Java application that then I let my students modify to make it more secure. So I spent a whole summer teaching myself Java because, as I said, I went to college in the 80s and Java didn't even exist. So I never learned Java. So I taught myself Java for the summer and I coded up this application. It was so much fun. And I realized how much I miss coding. But computer science in general, beyond coding, I use it every day because I teach it. Even when I'm not in the classroom, I meet with students, I advise students who are planning their careers in computing, and I'm constantly talking about different areas of computing that they might want to go into. I do research in computing. My research is in software engineering. So I read papers and I study software developers and I collect data and have results, which involves computer science, but it's also about computer science. I'm steeped in it every day.
In your opinion, what does it take to be successful in this field?
What does it take? Knowing that you can. I don't know. There aren't that many ways. Contrary to popular belief, there are way more ways to succeed than there are ways to fail in computing, because it's so broad. There's so many different things you can do. If you don't like coding, or you're not don't have incredible coding skills, that's okay. There are tons of other things you can do in computing. In most places, the curriculum starts with coding. And so people get the wrong idea that, if you're going to have a career in computing, that you're going to spend your life in a cubicle coding 8 hours a day. And that's really, really not true. You kind of have to understand coding, but you don't have to be a master coder to have a successful career. I think one thing that's key is understanding the relationship between people and technology, and not getting too bogged down in just thinking about the machines, but thinking about what the machines are doing and what impact that has on people and organizations and society, and keeping a broad view of the role of technology in society. Computing professionals need to be responsible, and need to think about the big picture, the big questions in the world, because technology, we're already seeing some areas of technology are really having unintended consequences. And it's really the technologists, the computing professionals, who need to be able to think through that and think ahead. So I think to be successful, you keep the big picture in mind, I guess. Be flexible. Don't limit yourself to coding 8 hours a day types of jobs. And those types of jobs are disappearing anyway. There just aren't that many jobs where you really spend all your time coding. I guess the other really big thing is brushing up on your teamwork skills. Any job in computing, you're working in a team, you're working with other people. So as much practice as you can get doing that is important. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Do you have any teachers or mentors that inspired you?
I do. I guess starting with my high school math teacher. So as I said, I graduated from high school in 1982. So I was in high school in the late 70s, early 80s, at a time when I now understand that there was a lot of sexism. There was a lot of bias against girls in terms of technical fields like math. But my math teacher, and I went to a very small high school, so there was one math teacher basically who taught all the upper level math. And I had him for trig in my junior year and calculus in my senior year. And he never, ever, ever hinted that he expected girls to do any differently than boys. In fact, if anything, he promoted the sort of implicit assumption that girls were better at math than boys. So I thought that was normal. I I thought, okay, I'm good at math. There's nothing unusual about that. Everybody seems to be accepting of the fact that I'm a girl and I'm good at math. And really in college, it was much the same way. I had a lot of professors who also kind of encouraged that anti-stereotype. It wasn't until I got to grad school that I realized the rest of the world kind of had the opposite view. Uh, so I credit my high school math teacher, Mr. Smith, for kind of setting that tone that was very encouraging. He wasn't like super charismatic or anything, but he was a good teacher and made it clear that he thought I was good at math, and that was a great thing. Then, I've had lots of different teachers and professors over the years who've been really good and really supportive. My PhD mentor, who mentored me for 6 years while I was doing my PhD and was the supervisor for my dissertation, and then continued to be a mentor and still is actually to this day. I'm still in touch with him. And he's the one who taught me, I guess, about the bigger picture of computing in society and how being a good person and being a person who cares about the effect of your work on other people is really important.
So I know you already touched on this a little bit, but are there any other kinds of sexism that you have faced that you haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, probably what had the biggest impact was being so isolated. I mean, a lot of classes, especially in grad school, well, in undergrad too, I was the only woman in the class a lot of the time. And that's rough, especially when the professor points it out all the time, and made me feel even more isolated by pointing out the fact that I was the only woman in the room. So it could be very isolating. But and it's just very subtle, this whole idea of, women can be here in computing, but it's not really, we don't really expect much of girls and women. And that it's really subtle, and it's getting better. It's getting better, but it's still there to some extent. So it tends to be pretty subtle. There's some of the classic examples of, girls working on a team, or females working on a team with mostly other males. They bring up ideas and they tend to be talked over, or somebody else takes credit for their ideas, or nobody pays attention to their ideas. Kind of disappear into the background sometimes. And that's hard. You have to push a little harder and talk a little louder to make yourself heard, which isn't fair, but it happens sometimes.
So what do you value most about computer science, or the skill of knowing how to code?
I think what I value most is as I said before, the wide array of things you can do with it, and how pervasive it is in society, for good or bad. You like any really powerful tool, you can use it to do good things. You can use it to do bad things, and sometimes people use it for what they think are good things, and it has unintended consequences. But I guess the power of the tool is what really inspires awe in me, that there's just so much computers can do, and it's a little scary sometimes, but there are so many problems that we're going to be better able to solve because we have computing. So that's what I admire the most about the field. Excuse me.
So this is kind of similar to another question, but what do you wish you would have known when you were in high school?
Yeah. Again, I wish I had a better understanding of how powerful computing was going to be. I mean, I was in high school, and I didn't grow up in an environment where I had a lot of understanding of the larger world. I didn't travel a lot as a kid. I've traveled a lot since, but as a kid, I hadn't traveled much. I didn't know a whole lot about the world outside the town where I grew up. So it made sense, even if I had known about the power of computing and what it was going to be able to do. I'm not sure I would have understood what its potential impact would have been, but I do wish I had a better understanding of just how pervasive and powerful computing would be, and how many different wide-ranging areas of society it would affect. Yeah.
So do you know of any good sites to learn how to code, or like things for like gaming, or like I guess
Gaming, no, gaming's not really my area, but oh, there are a ton of them. There's, I think, is it code.org or coding.org, is a good basic one to get started. There, I know of organizations who probably have good resource pages. Girls Who Code, there's Baltimore Girls Who Code. Oh, I'm blanking. Sorry, I didn't prepare for this question, but yeah, those would be the ones. There's one, I just can't think of the names. I might have to email you later with those.
okay, so that's this is the end of my questions. If you have anything else you would like to add or any questions for me.
Yeah, I guess as far as advice, I guess one thing I didn't mention for girls who are interested in computing, yeah, keep at it. You can do it, and also seek out other girls and women. So organizations like Girls Who Code, and you know, summer camps for females, and oh, I should give a plug for CWIT. So I'm director of CWIT, which is the Center for Women in Technology at UMBC. So if your audience is in the Baltimore area, we have two programs that we run during every year. In the fall is something called Cyber 101, which is open to high school girls who are interested in computing, and they come to campus for a weekend, stay overnight. Or I'm hoping this year we get to do it overnight again. We couldn't do it during the pandemic. But it's just a lot of sessions, and there's a competition, a coding competition, and it's all about cybersecurity careers and studying cybersecurity, particularly at UMBC, but elsewhere too, and what it's like to be a college student on campus. And then we have a similar program called Bits and Bytes in February every year, which isn't specific to cybersecurity. But it is the same sort of thing, and it's an overnight weekend kind of thing. We do it President's Day weekend, so we can go into Monday. But look for those, and you can sign up for them. I think the application for Cyber 101 will be open soon, probably by the end of this month. So so look for those and consider coming. That's, you know, not quite as big a commitment as a summer camp, but you get some of the same sort of things from them. But there, especially in the summer, there are tons of opportunities like that to be among a group of females who are interested like you in computing. And that's a really powerful experience, because women don't often get to be in a group of other women with an interest in tech, and it's a powerful experience. Yeah, yeah, I can't think of anything else in terms of advice or things people should know. Just, I would encourage folks to, if they have an interest in computing, whether it be in coding, or it doesn't have to be in coding, if you're just interested in the role of computing in society and what information technology can do, the kinds of problems it can solve, you know, follow that dream and study it. And it doesn't have to be in computer science. There are other options for things you can study in college that still put you in the computing world.
Okay, so thanks for letting me interview you.
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna end the recording now.